He's the botany program manager for Naval-based Coronado, and he's going to talk about recovering listed species on active military installations.
Yes, thank you.
Too short for me to.
Okay. Can everyone hear me? So yes, I am the botany program manager. To my friends and family, I'm comfortable calling myself a botanist. A little bit less comfortable in this room as I spend most of my time in front of a computer doing funding requests, data recall, reviewing reports. But fortunately, I work with a bunch of very talented botanists, many of them in the room, so a lot of people may know more about what I'm talking about than I am. So that's always nice and terrifying. So I'll be discussing San Clemente Island. I'm the botany program manager for Naval-based Coronado. San Clemente Island is one of the 7 properties in Naval-based Coronado. So in the talk, I'll be going through how San Clemente Island is unique, and in conjunction with the Navy ownership, how this is able to lead to a variety of broad and diverse management techniques, and also how this is able to document rare and exciting successes. So what makes San Clemente Island unique? First, it's an island, so you have rare island biogeography in play. It's the southernmost of the California Channel Islands. It's relatively dry. It only gets between 5 and 14 inches of precipitation a year. However, there's quite a bit of fog, so areas that receive fog and are able to capture that fog are relatively wet and can maintain wetter species than exist on the mainland. So we do have some relictual species that no longer exist on the mainland but can persist on the island. It's 20 miles long north to south and relatively narrow east to west, just 1 to 4 miles wide with very diverse topography. And that was new, okay. So within the diverse rainfall regime and the topography create a variety of different microclimates and habitats. You have anywhere from canyon woodland, perennial grassland, maritime sage scrub, sea bluff succulent, and others. And within all those unique habitat, that makes San Clemente Island one of the most botanically unique places in all of California. The island has 41 plant taxa that are endemic to the California Channel Islands, and 15 of these are found on San Clemente Island only. Additionally, we have 20 invertebrate taxa that are only found on San Clemente Island. Just within the past 2 years, we found a new species of ant and a new species of land snail. I imagine we'll continue to find more species into the future. And additionally, San Clemente Island has 4 endemic vertebrates found only on the island. So briefly go over the Navy ownership. It's 100% owned and operated by the U.S. Navy since 1934. We have control of who and what come to the island with no pesky neighbors to bother us. We control the operations that take place on the island, and as a federal entity, San Clemente Island is required to follow all applicable environmental laws. So that's ESA, NEPA, CITES Act, which covers the restoration and rehabilitation of military lands, Migratory Bird Treaty Act, Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, and many others. And the commanding officer of Naval-based Coronado is personally responsible for ensuring that all natural resources laws are adhered to. So that's why he fortunately has staff like me to help ensure that that is met. San Clemente Island is incredibly unique to national defense. It's part of the Socal Range complex, which is the most heavily used range complex in the Eastern Pacific. It's the only remaining U.S. range that simultaneously supports ship-to-shore, air-to-ground, and ground troop training. This used to occur also on the island of Vieques in Puerto Rico, but ever since Vieques was closed down, a lot of those operations came to San Clemente Island, so San Clemente has become busier and more important than ever. So to support all this training, there are 23 training areas and ranges across the island. Those are the green and orange areas on the map. We have 2 impact areas at the south end of the island in the shore bombardment area, down there in the brown hatching. And then we have an infantry operations area, which is the blue area down the spine of the island. And due for the need for privacy, as well as safety zones associated with these areas, a vast majority of the island is open space. 64% of the island is open space, 20% of the island only allows foot traffic for the infantry operations. 8% of the island is the impact area at the very south, 6% are other training areas, and 2% of it is developed with roads. However, even within these training areas, significant natural resources exist. So the shore bombardment area at the south, there aren't nuclear or other large bombs down there, so you would not even know that it's a bombing area in many of the places. The San Clemente Island woodland star, an SCI endemic found entirely within the shore bombardment area. Similarly, the San Clemente Island bush mallow, SCI endemic, almost found entirely within the shore bombardment area. This plant seems to benefit from the increased fire frequency from the training in those operations, and the largest populations, the greatest number, and the highest genetic diversity are all within heavily used training areas with the highest fire frequency. The Santa Cruz Island rock crest, no longer found on Santa Cruz Island, but it is found within the shore bombardment area on San Clemente Island. And Delfinian californicum, believed extinct for 100 years, exists in an area heavily used by Navy SEALs at the north end of the island. So the Navy takes managing robust populations very seriously, and I unfortunately have to talk about a bird to show this point. The San Clemente Island loggerhead shrike was once the most endangered bird in North America, with only about 10 to 20 breeding pairs remaining. And those low numbers often prevented certain military operations from taking place, which was incredibly costly to the Navy. So as the military importance of San Clemente Island has become more important, so too has managing the sensitive taxa. So natural resource management is certainly not the Navy's mission. However, having a robust natural resources management program is crucial to ensure that San Clemente Island can meet its military mission. And how we do that is money, money, money. There's a robust natural resources program is to support the military mission on San Clemente Island, which allows for a variety of broad and unique management actions. And annually, San Clemente Island, we spend roughly $2 million to support the botanical program. So I'll go through some of these techniques. The ones highlighted in blue I'll discuss a little bit more detail. We have an invasive species control and eradication program on the island. This is consists of your common weeds, vertebrates. We removed all of our feral ungulates by 1991. We're currently working on eradicating Argentine ants from the island. We do erosion control, habitat and sensitive plant restoration, quite a bit of sensitive species monitoring, and annual fuel and fire break installation, long-term ecological trend monitoring, pollinator studies, phytolith studies, quite a bit of genetic research, and we utilize drones to assist in our natural resources management. So the habitat and sensitive plants restoration, this is done by the Soil Ecology and Restoration Group out of San Diego State University. We currently have 39 plantings. These are to create habitat for our sensitive wildlife taxa, as well as to do rare plant installation for our sensitive species. At these sites, there's been over 16,000 plants installed, with about a 60% survivorship at year 5. As we pondered techniques and collected data to figure out what makes a successful site, some of our more recent sites have upwards of 80% survivorship. At these sites, we have 24 species recruiting. You can see these at the right. Most of them are within the Asteraceae family, as you'd expect. We do have a total of about 10 families documented recruiting at our restoration sites, with over 4,500 recruits. And additionally, we have acorns. The first ever documented acorn production was in 2013 from a restoration site created in the early 2000s. In addition to the restoration, to the planting, we also do oak seeding, where we just put acorns in the ground, clear a little duff out of the way, put a plant protector around, and really don't do anything else. There's no additional weed control, no watering. We've done that with 2,600 acorns, and we have an emergence rate of just 42%. However, after the emergence, there's a survivalship of 88%. So in my mind, that is the best bang for the buck for habitat restoration on San Clemente Island. One rare plant I'd like to go into detail is the Delfinian californicum. Again, this was a plant believed to be extinct for about 100 years. It's a California native annual grass. It was found in Catalina Island in 2005 and on San Clemente in 2010. We currently only have one population of this in an area heavily used by Navy SEALs. So we're currently attempting to create 8 to 10 additional self-sustaining populations on the island. And the first effort to do this started early last year. We collected seeds from a natural population, grew them in a greenhouse, then outplanted 256 of them. We put them into 4 different treatments. So we planted them in grass, which was mostly an annual grassland. We planted them amongst Lycium or boxthorn. We planted them in Calistigia, and we planted them in clearings between the ice plant or areas recently cleared of ice plant. And of the 250 planted, 179 survived to seed. However, we had a very different survivorship in each treatment class, and in the annual grass, we only had about 35% survive to seed. Within the Calistigia and the ice plant, we had 3/4 survive to seed, and in the Lycium, we had 95% survive to seed. So we'll utilize this data for additional sites this year and in future years until we meet our goals of 8 to 10 self-sustaining populations. We've also done quite a bit of genetic research on our island taxa. This is done out of Caius Hellener's lab, it was originally San Diego State University, but he has since moved to South Dakota State University. So we've done quite a bit of genetic studies on our species just because island taxa often have unique genetics which can require unique, different management decisions. So we've done a total of 27 taxa on the island, and this is focused often on our listed species. So our listed species we have multiple studies for. One of these is the Delfinian Variegated on San Clemente Island. Currently, the Jepson manual describes 2 taxa on San Clemente Island. The lateral sepal length and the lower petal blade length characteristic, however, are mostly unuseful in determining the 2 taxa. The only thing where there appears to be any difference is the color, and we have the subspecies Clementiensis, which is found at mostly the north end of the island and has white flowers, and the subspecies Thornii, which is mostly found in the south end of the island but has dark purple flowers. However, all across the island we have mixed populations of white and purple flowers, as well as in-between colors. This occurs mostly at the center of the island, and the color makeup of the populations across the island appears to be unchanged in at least the past 20 years. So we've looked into genetic data to see if these taxa are indeed different. And the genetic data showed that gene flow was prevalent among all populations, north, south, white, purple, mixed, and that the genetic differences between the white and the purple population was undetectable. And so here you can see in the upper left we have a very dark one, lower right, white one, upper right, someone in between, and then lower left you have 7 different colors of delphinium all growing within 25 feet of each other. And so this was quite a conundrum for management issues. Another species we've done quite a bit of genetic research on is the Clementiensis. This is an SCI endemic species. Just like other members of the genus, it's highly clonal. We originally did allozyme data, and it showed that there was very little genetic differentiation across the species, so we were concerned that reproduction was 100% asexual. However, we did more refined microsatellite techniques, and it showed much more genetic variation with as many genotypes as number of individuals, and so the clonal growth was a lot less prevalent than thought. And since then, we began looking and found quite a bit of seeds, and then you can see just 2 years ago we found the first ever germinant from this plant in a recently burned area in the shore bombardment area at the south end of the island. We utilize drones, so the drones can monitor sensitive species in the off-limits areas. These are the areas that have a high prevalence of unexploded ordnance or bombs where we don't normally go. So the drones can monitor for the abundance of species, they can monitor for the threats to the species, and an invasive species team can be deployed if necessary if an invasive species is present in that area. The drones also support vegetation mapping efforts, they monitor for erosion, and they can monitor for other threats to other sensitive plant and wildlife species. So here you can see on the right we have actual pictures from the drones, and in the lower left the drone software can create overall habitat mosaic which can be used to map long-term trends over time. So just some of the rare and exciting successes we've been able to document on the island. The long-term data have showed overwhelmingly increase in the number of endemic native plant species. The 6 federally listed taxa have increased significantly over the past 20 to 30 years. For example, the Indian paintbrush, 1,000 individuals when it was first listed, now we have tens of thousands of individuals. Similarly, Clementiensis was 1 individual when it was listed, and now we have 80 occurrences with thousands of individuals for that as well. In the past 30 years, we've also rediscovered 3 species on the island, Sabara filifolia, Lithophragma maximum, and Discipelium californicum. Our long-term ecological trend monitoring done by Tierra Data has shown that herbaceous plants that were once rare now number in the millions. So this is clear for a bunch of species. One incredibly impressive one is the San Clemente Island Rhodea, which was virtually non-existent after the goats were removed and now numbers in the millions. We used to have a map showing the location of every shrub on the island, and it was entirely confined to canyon walls. Now the shrubs are beginning to cover the island. The long-term trend data show Artemisia californicum covering the south end of the island in the loam-based soils, and the coyote brush covering the north end island in the more clay-based soils. So this increase in plants and habitat, there's been a dramatic increase in the wildlife as well. We've had over 10 times number of loggerhead shrikes nesting in just the past 20 years. Well over a 10-time increase in the San Clemente sage sparrow in just the same time period. So many sage sparrows are having to redesign our monitoring to try to figure out how to capture them. Additionally, the recently listed island night lizard numbers between 2 and 20 million individuals on the island. So the increase in native habitats and the increase in sensitive species is in stark contrast to the losses of both that are occurring mostly across California, the United States, or the world. So the keys to the success on the island are the access control. We control who and what come to the island. We have range safety areas. Roughly only 1/3 of the island is used for training, and significant natural resources even exist within these areas. Compliance outreach and pre-activity of briefs to ensure compliance, because the Navy is required to comply with all federal laws. And we do have sufficient funds available to do monitoring that allows us to assess the success of our program and of our resources. So the future of the resources on the island, due to the increased military importance of San Clemente Island, the island is likely to be in the hands of the Navy for the foreseeable future and likely beyond. But San Clemente Island natural resources programs are fundamental to support continued operations, and species recovery continues on San Clemente along with increasing operations. So a huge thank you to Tier Data for the use of maps and pictures, Channel Islands Restoration for the use of pictures, as well as the ice plant removal they do annually on the island. Thank you to our regulatory partner, the Carlsbad Fish and Wildlife Service, which we work closely with to recover the species. And then a huge thank you to the San Diego State Soil Ecology and Restoration Group. There are a number of current and former members here today, and the program would not be as successful or well-respected if it weren't for them. So thank you to them, thank you to all for coming. And just a quick picture, we're not supposed to have favorites, but this is my favorite rare island endemic, the San Clemente Island birdfoot trefoil. So, any questions?
Time for a couple of questions. So.
You seem to have a fairly good community-based volunteer program working with you. My experience in Washington State was on Hanford Reservation, and in San Diego it's been on Pacific. And it's been spotty. We get a hell of a lot of cooperation, and then all of a sudden the Homeland Security steps in, and we're dead in the water. The real question I have here is about the continuity of your program with volunteer support, which is something we could very, very easily support. And a traditional pattern of getting everything ganged up, ready to go, expenses committed, and then just chopped off at the neck with absolutely no opportunity for it.
The questions about use of funds and volunteers, and unfortunately for you, unfortunately for me, we don't experience that issue. Just as I said before, with the military importance of the island, the funding stream is identified 7 years ahead of time just to make sure that there are no breaks in funding. And so I know exactly what my funds are going to be for the next 7 years, which is great. It's hard to plan a program 7 years in advance and get emergent funds. So fortunately, I have my predecessor to thank for a lot of the program. I'm trying to build the program so that I can do more in future years. But yeah, we're incredibly lucky with the amount of funding and the continuity of funding that we have.
You can commit to volunteer participation for 7 years.
In receiving or giving volunteer participation?
Receiving volunteer.
Not for 7 years for volunteers. That's an annual basis based on access and availability to the island. So yes.
Okay, so one quick question, Brett.
How are you getting rid of Argentinians?
Corey Merrill, who's here today, I don't know if she's in the audience, she's working on it. We're doing this, we're using the same program they did on Santa Cruz Island. So we have little bait balls of sugar and toxins. So hopefully we've documented all occurrences. We have them known in 8 locations across the island. It's mostly areas where we have supplemental water. And so we're hoping that we found all those areas. We're treating all the satellite populations this year, and then we're going to hit town in upcoming years, and then there'll be obviously many years of monitoring to make sure that we've eradicated those.
So maybe just, if somebody has one more very quick question. Yes.
Are you, within your use areas, you said there's a lot of sensitive resources in there. Are you allowed to impact those resources, or do you have to have like a management plan that has, like in the training areas?
Yeah, within the training areas, we've consulted with the U.S. the Fish and Wildlife Service. Because we are a federal agency, we only need to work with the Federal Fish and Wildlife Agency. And so we do have, there's no take for plants, but we do have adverse effects. But for the plants, vast majority of where they are love it. The Delfinium, Malcathamnus love the increased burning. The other plants are located outside of those areas, and so we avoid the military operations from affecting those areas, and we try to keep burns away from those areas. And so the species that are less tolerant to fires, we avoid operations in the area that would negatively affect them.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you.